The priest wanted me on my knees, but not for prayer. I didn't go to church looking for anything, not forgiveness, not guidance, and definitely not temptation. But somehow that old cathedral became the place where everything in me was pulled apart and slowly, recklessly rebuilt. He was the last person I expected to even look at me twice. Father Luca. Mid-30s, calm, graceful, eyes like winter and a voice that could quiet the world. His sermons were gentle, his presence magnetic. But there was something else behind his collar, something raw, and the way he looked at me that Sunday morning, it wasn't holy. I was 23. Out, but not loud, still figuring myself out. And then he stepped into my confusion like a prayer I didn't know I'd whispered. I thought I was the sinner in the story. Turns out he was the one fighting demons, because what happened between us didn't feel wrong, it felt inevitable. Before we dive into this deeply emotional, forbidden story of longing, shame, and the kind of connection that breaks rules and redefines everything, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of the stories that make your heart race and your thoughts spiral. Now take a deep breath, because this isn't just about desire. It's about the things we're told to hide, and what happens when we stop hiding. I didn't grow up religious. Sunday mornings were for cartoons, not church pews. My mother believed in kindness, not confession. My father wasn't around enough to believe in anything. So stepping into a church at 23 felt like a mistake. But I was tired, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that means. The chapel was old, beautiful really. Tall ceilings with beams like ribs holding up the sky. The scent of incense and polished wood filled the air. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, just patient, waiting. I sat in the back, hoodie on, hands shoved in my pockets. I was just there to think, not pray, not confess, not believe. I hadn't believed in much for a while. Then I saw him. At first I thought he was just some guy lighting candles. Black shirt, black slacks, neat beard, sleeves rolled up past his elbows. He moved like he didn't know people were watching, and maybe he didn't care. Or maybe he was just that comfortable with silence. When he finally turned toward the front, I noticed the collar. A priest, of course. But he didn't look like the ones I expected. He didn't look judgmental, or soft, or detached. He looked tired, strong, like he'd seen too much and still chose to stay. He walked up the steps to the altar and started arranging the communion table, speaking quietly with one of the older women in the front row. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his voice carried, low, smooth, measured. I should have left then, but I didn't. "Can I help you?" The voice startled me. I turned and he was standing 2 pews behind me. I hadn't even seen him walk back there. No," I said quickly. "Just sitting." His eyes were gray. No, not gray, storm-colored, alive and heavy at the same time. He nodded. "You're welcome to sit. We have a service starting in about 20 minutes. "I'm not here for that," I mumbled. He didn't flinch. "All right." He turned to go, but stopped, looked back. "I'm Father Luca." I hesitated. "Eli." He smiled. "Well, Eli, let me know if you need anything. Water, silence, company." Then he walked away, and I hated how warm that made me feel. I stayed. I listened. I didn't understand half of what he preached that morning, but his voice held me. He talked about mercy, not just from God, but from ourselves. About how people carry shame like armor. About how sometimes the hardest thing to do is forgive who you've become. It was the first time I'd heard something in church that felt like it had teeth. Like it wasn't just floating above people's heads. it was for someone. And maybe, stupidly, I thought it was for me. After the service, people shook his hand, asked for blessings, brought up illnesses and dead uncles. He took it all, patient, present. I watched from a distance, like some curious outsider watching a man do something I couldn't name. And then his eyes found mine. He nodded once. I don't know why I walked toward him. I wasn't planning to. My feet just moved. I liked your message, I said. Which part? All of it, I lied. He smiled. That's rare. Most people just compliment the music. There was a pause. He was looking at me, not scanning, not judging, seeing. You're not a church guy, he said. No, but something brought you here. I looked away. Yeah, don't know what. He didn't press. He just said, I'm usually here during the week, around 6. It's quieter then, if you ever need space. Thanks. I left before I could say anything stupid. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about his voice, his face, the way he looked at me like he already knew the parts I tried to hide. I told myself I wouldn't go back. But the next week, I was there again. Same bench, same silence. And when he saw me, he smiled like he expected me. And I hated how much I wanted that smile to mean something. I didn't plan on going back that second time. But Tuesday rolled around, and at 5:40 p.m., I was already walking down the street toward the church, hands in my pockets, heart hammering like I owed someone something. It wasn't about religion. It was about him. The chapel was quieter during the week, emptier too. The stained glass windows let in soft, colored light that made the space feel like a dream. I sat in the same pew as before. It was starting to feel like mine. 10 minutes passed. I told myself I'd leave if he didn't show up. At 6:01, the side door opened. He walked in, carrying a small box of candles and a folder tucked under his arm. He didn't notice me at first. He was focused, moving with the kind of calm that made you want to sit still and just watch. I did. When he finally saw me, his expression didn't change, except for his eyes. They lit up. Eli, he said, approaching slowly. Back so soon? I shrugged. Told you I wasn't religious. Good, he said, setting the box down. Makes 2 of us. That caught me off guard. You're a priest. He smirked. Doesn't mean I don't struggle with belief. There it was again, that strange honesty. Like he wanted me to see through the collar, to the man underneath. He sat in the pew in front of mine, turning sideways so he could face me. Rough week? Isn't it always? He nodded, resting his arms on the back of the pew. I come here after hours because it's the only time this place doesn't ask anything of me. When it's quiet, it lets me just be. I knew exactly what he meant. He asked me about my life, not in a pushy way, but like he actually cared. I told him I'd just left my job at a coffee shop, trying to figure out what came next, that I lived alone, had no idea what I believed in, and most of the time, I felt like I was pretending to be a person in control. He listened, and when I looked at him, I could feel something between us. Not romantic yet, not clearly, just something hungry, curious, human. Then he said, I used to sing before seminary. What happened? He hesitated. I wanted to quiet a part of myself that scared me. I didn't ask which part. I didn't have to, because I felt it too. That night we didn't talk about God. We talked about music and books, and how both of us liked walking in the rain because it made the world feel softer. He laughed when I told him I hated summer because it made people too comfortable with their skin. Maybe that's a good thing, he said. Or maybe some of us don't want to be seen. His eyes darkened a little. You ever feel like you're constantly hiding, even when no one's looking? I nodded. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "Me too." The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was loud, thick with everything we didn't say. Eventually, I stood to leave. He stood too. We were close, closer than we should have been. I could smell the faint scent of something warm on his skin, sandalwood and old books. I looked up at him, and for a second, I swear his gaze dropped to my mouth. My breath caught. He stepped back first, just slightly, enough to remind us both where we were. "Same time next week?" he asked, his voice softer now. I nodded. "Yeah." As I turned to go, he said one more thing. "Eli." I looked back. I'm glad you came back." I walked home that night with my chest full of questions I didn't know how to ask. And one answer I was starting to be afraid of. I wanted him, but I didn't know if he was already falling the same way. The week dragged. I kept telling myself it was just curiosity, just some strange, impossible tension between me and a man who wasn't supposed to feel anything. But that wasn't true, and I knew it. The truth was uglier, louder. I kept replaying that last look he gave me right before I left the church. It wasn't just kindness, it was need. Wednesday came again. I got there early. Too early. The sun was still out, casting long shadows across the marble floor. I sat in the same pew, staring up at the stained glass window. A saint stared down at me, hands open in peace. I looked away. I wasn't looking for peace. The door opened behind me. I didn't turn, but I knew it was him. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, measured, calm, almost reluctant. Then he slid into the pew behind me. "Couldn't stay away?" he said quietly. "I could ask you the same." There was a pause, just breath, just presence. "I wasn't sure if you'd come back," he said. I turned to face him. I wasn't sure either. His eyes searched mine like he was trying to find the line neither of us had drawn, but both of us were already close to crossing. He looked tired. His shirt sleeves were rolled up again, his collar loose. He didn't look like a priest tonight. He looked like a man. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice low. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he said, "but I can't pretend this isn't happening." I exhaled slowly. "I don't want to be a problem for you." "You're not a problem," he said. "You're a reminder." "Of what?" His jaw tightened. "Of everything I gave up, and everything I never stopped wanting." The words hit me so hard I looked away. "Do you regret becoming a priest?" I asked. "No," he said, "but sometimes I regret not knowing who I really was when I chose it." He reached forward and gently touched my wrist. It wasn't a grab, not a pull, just a touch, barely there. But it was enough to stop time. His fingers lingered, warm, steady, hesitant. I looked at his hand on my skin. "You shouldn't be doing this," I whispered. "I know." He pulled his hand back, but not all the way, just enough to leave behind the absence of it. I turned fully toward him. Our knees touched. We were too close. Everything in my body screamed to lean in. He looked at my mouth again. This time I saw it. I swallowed hard. "If I kissed you right now—" "Don't," he said quickly, but his voice shook. I waited. "I'm not ready," he added. "You already did," I said, staring into his eyes. "With your hands, with the way you look at me." He blinked slowly. "This isn't supposed to happen." Then why does it feel like it already is? A long silence. He looked down, then back at me, like he was fighting something stronger than Scripture. Then his hand reached out again, but this time he didn't stop at my wrist. He brushed his fingers against my jaw, soft, reverent, trembling, and I leaned into the touch. For a second, that's all it was, skin against skin, breathing in sync. Then, footsteps echoed from the back of the church. We jumped apart. A door creaked open. "Father Luca?" a voice called. A woman's voice, nervous, searching. He stood instantly, his hand leaving mine like he was burned. "Yes, I'm here," he said, voice steady, turning toward the sound. He didn't look back at me. He walked away, collar straightening with every step. And I sat there, pulse racing, skin still warm from where he'd touched me, wondering what that moment had meant, if it had meant anything at all, or if I was just one more sin he'd try to erase tomorrow. After the last time, after the way he touched my face, the way he walked away without a word, I told myself I wouldn't go back. But that was a lie. Friday evening came, and I found myself walking toward the church again, hands deep in my hoodie pockets, heart racing like I was breaking some law. Maybe I was. Not the legal kind, but the kind that draws lines between right and wrong and begs you not to blur them. The chapel was fuller than usual. A community event, I realized. Choir rehearsals, volunteers, people bustling with tasks and purpose. For a second, I almost left. I didn't belong here, not like that. But before I could turn around, I saw him. He was up near the altar, dressed in full black, his collar neat, his hair pushed back. Every movement was precise, controlled. And yet, he looked tired. He hadn't seen me yet. I took a seat in the back, unsure why I'd come, unsure what I expected to feel. And then his eyes found mine. Everything around us froze. He blinked once, but didn't look away. Not for a full 5 seconds. Not until someone beside him spoke and he turned, slipping back into his role as if nothing had happened. But I saw it. His shoulders had stiffened. He knew I was here. And it shook him. An hour passed. I waited. Just sat there like some ghost from his past, refusing to disappear. Finally, people began filing out. The light dimmed, and the echo of footsteps faded. I stayed. He did too. Eventually, he came down the aisle, slow, cautious, like he wasn't sure what version of himself he'd have to be when he reached me. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. I nodded. "I know." He sat beside me, just far enough that our knees didn't touch, but close enough to feel it. "You ran," I said. "I had to." "No," I said, turning to him. "You chose to." He looked at me, jaw tight. "You think this is easy for me? That I can just turn everything off because of a look? A touch?" "You didn't turn it off," I said. "You're here." "I'm here because I don't know how to stop," he said. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The words sat between us like fire. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "I took vows, Eli. I committed my life to something that doesn't allow for this." "What if that commitment is killing part of you?" I asked. "What if what you gave up is the very thing that would have saved you?" He didn't respond. Then, the doors burst open. We both jumped. A woman ran in, breathless, phone in hand. "Father Luca! It's James! There's been an accident!" He stood instantly. "Where?" "2 blocks down. Car flipped. It's bad. They're calling for last rites." Without hesitation, he ran toward the back, grabbing his coat. But before he disappeared through the door, he looked at me one last time. Not as a priest, not as a man torn, just a man. "I'll be back," he said. I nodded, but he was already gone. I sat in the silence, alone in the pew, trying to process everything. The intensity of what he said, the pain in his voice, the way he wanted me but couldn't have me. Or maybe he could, but was afraid of what that would mean. He left for death, and I was still sitting in the middle of something that felt more alive than anything I'd ever known. He came back 2 hours later. His shirt was wrinkled, collar loosened, eyes red. He didn't speak, just sat beside me in the empty chapel and let the silence stretch. I didn't ask what happened. I just reached for his hand. This time, he didn't pull away. He looked at me, tired and vulnerable, and whispered, "I thought I could control this." "You can't. I don't want to anymore." Then his hand slid to my face again, and slowly, carefully, he kissed me. It wasn't wild. It wasn't rushed. It was everything he'd been holding back, finally given permission to exist. And when it ended, he rested his forehead against mine. "I don't know what this means," he said. "Me neither. But I don't want it to be over." Neither did I. But nothing was simple, because the next morning, his bishop showed up at the chapel. Chapter 6. The Weight of the Collar. They had questions, rumors. Someone had seen us, nothing concrete, but enough to plant doubt. He stood in front of them, silent, composed, but I saw the panic in his fingers. They shook. I left before they finished talking. That night, he showed up at my door. No collar, just Luca. "I'm not going back," he said. "You're leaving the church?" "I'm choosing the truth." I stepped aside and let him in. We didn't need to say more. What we had wasn't perfect. It was born from chaos and restraint. But it was real. And sometimes, real is the holiest thing you can feel. If this story stirred something in you, think about what parts of yourself you've been forced to bury, what truths you've silenced, and ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped hiding? Subscribe for more stories like this, like the video. And if you've ever fallen for someone you shouldn't have, tell us in the comments. You're not alone.